talk about race and not just America, but around the world. It seems that we're at the moment in the midst of a series of appalling attacks which are being done in the name of racism, of bigotry, of religious intolerance, call it what you will. They're hate crimes against people based on how they look, what their religion is, and so on, whether it's attacks on Muslims or the attacks we saw on a Jewish synagogue in America this week. What is going on here? What is fomenting all this hate?
I think that we have began to see people feel empowered because people are expressing openly that it is somehow normal to despise, hate, or hurt people based on who they are. And that is wrong. And I think that people of different races or religions have to come together and condemn it. When we saw it happen in Poway, California, non-Jewish leaders need to say, wait a minute, this is intolerable. When we see it happen to Muslims in Sri Lanka, non-Muslim leaders need to say it. Because this tolerance at the top, or this selective outrage, this one of the things I've been critical of President Trump on. He was right to go to Pittsburgh after the synagogue was attacked. He was right to call a rabbi after Poway. But he said nothing about 3 black churches burned down in Louisiana in between. You can't have selective outrage because then you empower people that share that bias.
How much responsibility do you put on him for allowing these feelings to fester? His comments about immigration, countries in Africa, a word we can't use on air. His comments about Mexican immigrants, his tweets where he retweeted a racist group here on Twitter and didn't remove those tweets. What do you think his responsibility is when he goes to Charlottesville, or he says about the Charlottesville protests, that there are many fine people on both sides? You know, people accuse him of not being critical enough of white supremacy, or even worse,
I think that he has a lot of responsibility as the head of state to set a tone. It is a bully pulpit. And last week when he was responding to what former Vice President Biden had come in and attacked him on Charlottesville, his response was, well, there were fine people there. They were just honoring the statue of Robert E. Lee. Robert E. Lee was the general of a Confederate army to overthrow the U.S. government to keep slavery. That's worse than the original statement he made to honor Robert E. Lee. And I think that Donald Trump has a responsibility, or any head of state, to set a tone that we will not tolerate this kind of racism and bigotry. And I think, you know, I've known him 35 years. We've fought more than we've agreed. He's smart enough to know the signal he's sending. It's a dangerous signal. He's not doing it in the blind. I think there's a political calculus to those that play on divisiveness, and I think that's the worst kind of politics.
I don't disagree with you. Do you think, having known him that long, that he's a racist? Because in all the time I've known him, I've never had that feeling from him, but I have also been dismayed by some of his rhetoric. So how would you categorise
I would think, you know, for years I tried to give him the benefit of the doubt, even though I would march on him in certain things, say he's just playing to the racists. But if you're comfortable playing to the racist, you're a racist. Or you'll do to the real racist shows up. I mean, to be comfortable with that, it means there's got to be some racism in you. Because why would you even want to play to that crowd and be beloved by that crowd? So I absolutely think that all of my doubts are gone there, and that there's something basically racist about the president.
There's a massive outpouring now of excitement about endless Democratic candidates. There's about 20 of them now entered the field. We're entering election year quite soon. Donald Trump is in a pretty good position, notwithstanding the polls. The economy is in very good shape, really, comparatively. You know, he would argue that he's done a lot of the stuff he said he would do. His base seems rock solid. He's going to be a tough candidate to beat. We know he's a very tough campaigner. When you look at the field, Biden is way ahead in the initial polling since he put his hat in the ring last week. But is Biden at 76 a kind of white middle-class guy? Is he the right candidate to drive the Democrats to unseat Donald Trump?
Well, we'll see. I know Biden. I think he has a lot of skills and he's a big threat. But I think when you look at the field, I had lunch with Buttigieg before I left.
What do you make of him? He's Mayor Pete. He's the first openly gay candidate we've had, actually.
Very bright, very able. We had lunch at Harlem, but I've talked to all of them. I'm impressed with Kamala Harris very much.
If we got to, like, January and it looked like all the Democrat candidates were tanking in any polling against Trump, and it looked like Trump was going to be a runaway re-election, and the economy has continued to power away for argument's sake. If you're Michelle Obama and you've just written a book that's the biggest selling autobiography in history, you've got Barack Obama next to you, so you get two for the price of one, if you like. In many ways, I've always felt she's a much warmer and more empathetic potential first female president than Hillary Clinton was, for example. You know, you might come under a lot of pressure from Democrats to say, please, Michelle, save us.
I would join that pressure on her, but I don't know if it would work. I think you hit it right on the head, though, Piers. I think that the key to her is her authenticity. People feel she means what she says and that she's being real. And I think I told that to all the candidates that I talked to. Authenticity is a problem. People, you know, the first time I came to London, James Brown, the soul singer, was like a father to me. He brought me over. And he told me something growing up that I never forgot. He said, people can feel you before they hear you. They know if you mean it. And that's the magic of Michelle Obama.
I met her once at the White House at a Christmas party, and the interminable line of people, thousands, to a media party, where you queued up and you met the President and the First Lady, you got a picture, and God knows why they spent all that time doing it. Anyway, I finally got my 30 seconds. And Obama was understandably a bit distracted, tired, he looked like he just wanted to go to bed, you know. Michelle Obama, in that 30 seconds, made me feel special. She gave me a big hug, she was warm, she was friendly, and I was number 1,500, right? I was really struck by that she had a natural empathy and a dynamism about her.
She's a great person, but I don't think she'll run. I think the Democrats are going to have to find an authentic person that can either expand the room or bring out the maximum in the room. And I agree with you that Donald Trump, with all of my criticism, is not going to be easy to beat.
He's a brilliant campaigner.
I think he can be beat. But it will not. If they take him for granted, he will be re-elected with his fright.
Well, he's been in rally mode ever since he won. I mean,
Reverend, you've been involved, haven't you, in trying to help us tackle a really serious, painful issue, knife crime on our streets.
I have. You know, Narrow at 10 Downing Street, I was there yesterday before I went to speak at Cambridge, and I worked very closely with Simon Woolley. I think people don't understand, those of us involved in social protests do not ignore the fact that we've got to deal with a problem of knifing, of gun violence rising in UK and the United States. And how do we at the same time fight for people but try to improve them? It is a national health crisis here, and we've got to look at it in a holistic way. And I've been trying to give them advice on how we've had to try and balance it in the States, where you challenge the people that you're trying to help, and you try to help them because growing under this kind of pressure and stress has caused the kind of behavior that we can't normalize or accept. Even if you're down, you may not be responsible for being down, but you're responsible for getting up. And society must help to get them up.
It's a very interesting message.
I think that we've got to give them alternatives to gangs, that they can be a part of something that is constructive. But at the same time, I say to them that because people look down at you in a certain stereotype, don't fit the mold, break the mold. Don't become a thug because they think that's all you can be. So it's a two-sided message, and I think that's what we are trying to work with Nero about, is challenging them. I grew up in a broken home, single-parent mother, on welfare. I never knew I was underprivileged by society's definition till I got to college, and the professor said, we're going to study people out of broken homes, single parents on welfare. I said, he's talking about me, because my mother never raised me as to what I wasn't. She raised me as to what I was. And that's what we have to get into young people here, is that no matter how far down they've pushed you, it's not fair, but you can rise above it. You must rise above it.
When you were at Cambridge last night, were there enough black faces in the audience to make you feel that Cambridge and Oxford, these great pillars of our academic institutions in this country, are doing enough to encourage or to access young black people in Britain to come to those places?
I thought all the black students were studying for the finals because I didn't see many of them there. We had a good turnout, but a lot of black students weren't there.
I mean, you know, that...
I'm being facetious. No, there's not enough. And I think that we cannot have Oxford and Cambridge as the whole markers of great academic excellence worldwide, but they have an exclusionary policy and not an aggressive policy to correct it.
How do you correct it? I mean, do you literally say, right, because of perhaps the lack of advantage that young black people have had in this country academically through perhaps personal circumstance, you know, money in the family or whatever it may be.
You lower the threshold.
We are going to lower the threshold of the required grades to encourage more to come to Oxford and Cambridge. Do you do that?
I think you either lower the threshold or you raise the training level and you focus in an intentional way of training in those areas that they're getting the lower education to have them qualify. But you don't leave it as it is. If you're smart enough to be the biggest institutions in the world, you're smart enough to figure it out and correct it.
You know what? That is a great, great point. They're the smartest people in the country. They should be able to work out a better way, I think, of having a better demographic of students. Right?
1.5% of Cambridge University's intake last year were black students, and across the UK, it's 8% of undergraduates. That's the figure from...
Well, that is
unacceptable.
That's a shameful statistic, isn't it?